Good morning from a surprisingly sunny Stornoway airport here on the Isle of Lewis in the Outer Hebrides. It's so sunny in fact that I've had to put on my sunglasses. It's been miserable weather the past week, but as we leave it's typical, the sun comes out and it's shining. Anyway, for today's journey I'll be flying with Loganair all the way down to Glasgow airport, so it should be a really nice and interesting trip this morning. I've flown with Loganair before from Orkney down to Glasgow and that was a pretty small plane, so I'll be interested to know what we'll be flying on today, and obviously we'll be having a look around Stornoway airport, which actually looks smaller than the one in Kirkwall, so it'll be nice to have a look around. And as I said, it should be a nice flight down to Scotland's largest city this morning. So let's head inside the terminal, we can get these bags checked in and then we can get the video underway. Sitting 8 metres above sea level, Stornoway Airfield was opened in 1937 and has a rich military history, initially used during the Second World War and then as a NATO forward operating base from 1972 until 1998. Nowadays the airfield is of course used primarily for domestic passenger services operated by Scotland's airline Loganair, with a range of flights to Glasgow, Inverness, Edinburgh and Benbecula, and an annual usage of roughly 54,000 people. Today the terminal itself is operated by Highlands and Islands airports, being small but perfectly formed, with everything you'd expect, including the usual check-in desks where we dropped off our bags and received the boarding passes, a small gift shop and cafe where we sat and had a quick cup of tea, as well as a waiting area before heading through security to the departure gate. Having made it through security with no issues, we sat in the lounge as our Loganair Embraer Regional Jet 145 arrived with an inbound flight from Glasgow. Loganair actually have 11 of these aircraft in service, each carrying up to 49 passengers and named after various Scottish clans. And with the inbound flight on the tarmac outside the terminal, the portable ramp was deployed, the door was opened and the morning newspapers unloaded before refuelling for our 08:30 departure down to Scotland's largest city. With another short wait, we were soon called to the gate where our boarding passes were checked before heading out to the plane. For today's journey we'd be travelling on the aircraft GSAJJ, which was built over 26 years ago and entered service with Loganair back in 2019 after being named Clan Logan. On the inside, seating in the very tight cabin is laid out in a more spacious 2+1 configuration, with the seats themselves being extremely comfortable, featuring good padding, a classy leather finish and headrests, each with their own design of Harris tweed. A really unique touch which I absolutely love. And with departure time soon approaching, we pushed back from the tarmac and began to taxi over to the main runway, number 18, where the captain informed us of an approximate journey length of 40 minutes with fair winds for the 177-mile flight down to Glasgow. Just a few minutes later, we reached Takeoff, climbing away from Stornoway's tiny terminal and past the town itself. At this point you can clearly see the natural harbour, a feature which gave rise to a Viking settlement here in the early 9th century and would ultimately result in the town's prosperity as a key trading post and transport hub for people from all over the island, with regular ferry services back over to the mainland at Ullapool. However, today we're of course taking the much faster route by air, and with little effort, we soon reach cruising altitude for the short hop across to central Scotland. With seatbelt signs deactivated not long after, the complimentary onboard service could begin, delivered by the friendly crew in the form of water and the all-important caramel wafer and shortbread, a very Scottish snack Thoroughly enjoyed as we cruised over the cloud-covered highlands. Just 35 minutes later, we touched down at Glasgow Airport, meaning it's time to talk about the all-important prices. As many of you will already know, Loganair are by no means a cheap airline to travel on, with our single tickets costing £148.49 each, though this is cheaper if you're an island resident. Of course, these figures also vary depending on date and time, and despite their heavy price tag, you can always be sure of a friendly, comfortable and most of all convenient service from Loganair. So with that done and dusted, all that's left to do is to pick up our bags and round off today's vlog. Well, we've made it to Glasgow Airport, and that concludes a really nice and quick journey with Loganair. It only took 35 minutes to get from Stornoway to Glasgow, a journey that took us practically 2 days by train, coach and ferry. So it's interesting the difference in time it takes. That little plane just hops straight across over to Stornoway, so it was convenient. We didn't see much, but obviously it was quite cloudy today and it was still an enjoyable journey. So thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I will hopefully see you on my next adventure.